Good afternoon, everybody. It's Mike the Bowtie Writer. Happy Tuesday. This video is going up 2 days before Thanksgiving here in the United States, which means that everyone's spending time looking back and being reflective on things that are good for them, which is fantastic. Since I'm the Bowtie Writer, it seemed apropos to spend some time reflecting on books. So without further ado, here are 5 books that I am thankful for in this November. Now, I do want to clarify, this is not my, best books of 2017 or anything like that. This is not that sort of thing. The list is not quite what you might expect for some of these, but these are books that are important to me. Here we go. Let's start off. Number 5 on this list is Neil Gaiman's Stardust. This is a book where the premise is basically a second world magic. This kid goes across into the realm of fairy and he's trying to chase a falling star. Many of you might know it for a film of the similar type with a certain cross-dressing pirate. The book is a little bit different, but it is still a solid book. It's a wonderful Neil Gaiman story that has his excellent use of language. Now, why I'm thankful for this book is that this is actually one of the first books that my wife and I read aloud together, so it's something that we spent some time together with. It's really important to me because it's something my wife and I have shared, so I am very thankful for it. Number 4 on this list is a book that I checked out from the library this year. This is the book Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. It is a fabulous book. Simon is a high school student who is gay, who is trying to figure out how to come out with his parents. He also has an internet friend that he is emailing with back and forth named Blue, but he doesn't know who Blue is in real life. He just knows that he really likes Blue. And so he's trying to figure out who this person is. Oh yeah, and there's the small matter of he's got a school bully almost who's trying to blackmail him. This book is actually an incredibly sincerely sweet book. The characters are wonderful. Simon is just kind of adorable, and you get really, really invested in him and trying to figure out how to navigate the murky waters that is high school with all this extra baggage on top of it. The reason this book is really special to me is that in October, my uncle died, and that was pretty awful, I'll be honest. That was awful. I needed something light and fluffy and fun to read to just try and kind of help with that, to help kind of counterbalance all the heavy stuff that I was dealing with my family. And my wife brought this book home from the library, and it was absolutely adorable and light and fluffy and really cute. And so I really, really enjoyed this book. I highly recommend it. Number 3 on this list is The House of Shattered Wings by Aliette de Bodard. For reference, there is a sequel that's come out. The sequel is The House of Binding Thorns as well. That one actually just came out this year. I want to give you some context before I talk about these books. You have to understand that I quit reading fantasy for a while in about the mid-aughts. It just all seemed really the same. It seemed like a lot of white chosen kids who were ready to go out and save the world because of some prophecy. Now, I want to acknowledge, by the way, that though that was my perspective, that is not accurate. There was a ton of people doing really interesting and really varied stuff in fantasy, and I just hadn't found them yet. One of the books that I found that brought me back into reading a lot of sci-fi fantasy was these books, The House of Shattered Wings. The reason that it brought me back was because it showed me how different fantasy can be. It is set in a post-magical war Paris. Paris has been devastated by this magical war, and the people who are in charge are these various great houses. These houses are headed by the Fallen. The Fallen are literally fallen angels who have lots of magic, and that's why they're in charge. Aliette writes an incredibly fascinating and vivid and evocative setting with this city of Paris that just feels so real that you can reach out and touch it, but you don't want to because it's really sharp and it will cut you. Her language is positively stunning, so this is a fabulous book. These books I'm really thankful for because they showed me what fantasy can be. That it doesn't just have to be a bunch of white dudes in villages going out to save the world. You can do some really interesting stuff. And Aliette does. I'm really thankful for her books. Number 2 in this series is actually Jim Butcher's Deadbeat. This is part of the Dresden Files. The Dresden Files is an urban fantasy with the main protagonist being none other than Harry Dresden, a wizard who is also a detective in the Chicago phone book. There's some problems with some necromancers coming into town, and there's one scene that's really fascinating, although I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler alert, so if you haven't read it and you don't want it spoiled, pause it or skip right now. There's a scene where he is riding a zombie Tyrannosaurus, a zombie T-Rex. That scene happened, and it was just like, oh my god, this is clearly the scene that Jim Butcher was thinking of when he said he wanted to write this book, and yet he pulls it off amazing. It doesn't feel artificial, it doesn't feel contrived, it's just freaking amazing. This is also, in my mind, one of the most interesting and scary Dresden Files books because you really see Harry Dresden get pushed a lot. The reason that I'm actually thankful for this particular book, why it makes my list, is actually because a few years ago I was talking on Facebook and some girl mentioned the Dresden Files and we started talking, and what do you know, a few years later we ended up married. Yes, this book definitely wins its place on my list because it's one of the ways that I met my wife. If you haven't read the Dresden Files, the first book in the series is actually Stormfront. It's a very interesting series. It does go on. There's about 18 books or so. It's a lot of books in the series. It's also not done yet, although he's kind of been on hiatus on writing those books, so I'm not quite sure what's happening there. But it is a fantastic series. I highly recommend you check it out. It's very good. Number 1 on this list is Edgar Rice Burroughs' The John Carter of Mars books. This is a series of books written by Edgar Rice Burroughs, so they're a little bit old. The first of these books is actually called The Princess of Mars. John Carter is sort of this man's man who's an adventuring guy. He hides out from some other bad guys in a cave, and while he's in this cave, suddenly he freezes. He can't move. He hears something moving behind him, and he can't move. He can't even turn his head to see what's behind him. He just hears it getting closer and closer and closer, and bam! He wakes up on Mars. Now he's suddenly thrust into a brand new world. He doesn't know what's there. One thing that's really interesting is because of the lower gravity on Mars, though he's almost superhumanly strong, there's some stuff that's a little problematic with this book. It is old, and it's starting to show its age. But even with that stuff that's a little problematic, there is some fantastic world building. You've got the different Martian species, including four-armed Martians with swords. You've got his friend Woola, which is this eight-legged kind of guard dog who's actually really sweet. You've got Princess Dija Thoris, who's actually really assertive and super cool. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world building, and it's all framed around that really interesting framing story of what the hell happened to him in this cave, why can't he move, what was behind him. The reason it's on this list is a book that I'm really thankful for is because this is actually the book that really got me into sci-fi fantasy. When I was really young, my mom read these books to me, believe it or not. Yes, this is a book that I'm incredibly thankful for because it means a lot, because it's something that my mom and I shared. So yeah, it's kind of sappy, but this is also my list, and so I get to decide what's important for me. Alright, so that's all I have for this week. These are 5 books that I'm really thankful for. These books have just meant a lot to me at different points in my life, some of them more recently than others. Feel free to check them out. I'll put comments below about where you can actually pick up these books if you want to, or feel free to check these books out from the library if they sound interesting, and if they don't sound interesting, that's okay. No one has to like everything. Please feel free to like, share, or subscribe. That really does help me out. And also feel free to chime in the comments. What books are you thankful for? What books have made an impact on you? I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving if you're here in the States. If Thanksgiving is not your jam or not something you do, that's fine. I hope the rest of your week is fantastic. Keep on keeping on. I will talk to you all next time.